Assalamu alaikum. So in this video, I will be speaking about my revert story. Basically, I was born Jewish to a Jewish family and I converted to Islam in 2018. I get asked a lot of how I converted to Islam, of course, as most reverts get this question. So in this video, I'll get into it. But as I mentioned, I was born to a Jewish family. I was born in Montreal, Canada. Just a little background, my father is Ashkenazi Jewish. He is from Eastern, his family comes from Eastern Europe, and my mother is Mizrahi and Sephardic. And that means her mother was born in Morocco and her father was born in Yemen, and my mother was actually born in occupied Palestine, or as Jewish people call it, Israel. So to start, I guess how it all began, it's definitely a long story. I went to a Jewish school my whole life, obviously up until the end of high school. So at that point, I was super Jewish, believed in God. I always believed in God, but I believed in Judaism specifically. I believed in the Torah. I believed in the teachings of Judaism because I had a Jewish education and I held really closely to that. Since I went to Jewish school, I was also actually a staunch Zionist. I was super pro-Israel, and yeah, I held really closely to my religion and to, I guess, what I thought was my nationality, being Israeli. I started having like a bit of doubt in my heart about like what I was practicing, and then I like basically started distancing myself from God. So I lived like that for a few months, but then at one point I was like, I feel like alienated from God. I feel like I need to become closer to God. I feel like I needed to mend my relationship with God because I was starting to feel, empty without God's presence in my life. Before going to school every day on the bus, I took a little Tehillim, which is a book of Psalms, which was written by the King David. And I started reading that, and I was like, you know what, hopefully that's going to, ignite my, my passion, my, like, in Arabic we say my Imaan, my faith. So I started reading that, and like, it was really nice. It was a nice book. And I remember one thing in particular that I remember that kept reoccurring was how King David mentioned, he was prostrating in prayer to God. We prostrate in prayer to you, God. And it was mentioned over and over again. Same time, I didn't really have any Muslim friends. I had one Muslim friend, but she wasn't, we never spoke about religion. But I knew some like Muslim people online that I would sometimes speak to. And one time I had like a whole conversation with like, it wasn't a friend, it was like a Muslim online friend that I never met. Actually, I never really met in real life. But anyways, we had a discussion and we were sending each other videos about like, religion. And I saw this one video about like, debates between Muslims and Jews. And I started realizing at that point that Islam and Judaism are so similar. It was also at that point that I realized that Jews and Muslims believe in the same God, and also Christians, but that's not really relevant to the story. But up to till this point, I basically thought that Muslims worshipped a different God. They worshipped Allah, which is a different God. I realized that Allah is actually just the name for God in Arabic, just like Dieu is Arabic, French. It's like, okay, they believe in the Torah, they believe in the Gospels, they believe in all of the Jewish prophets that Jews believe in. And the only thing that they believe in more is the Prophet Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad as the seal of the prophets, and the Qur'an as the word of God. And I started reading the Qur'an, and the Qur'an made sense. And I was like, like there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfect. But at that point, I still wasn't like fully, convinced like I'm going to change my religion, because I felt like the thing that was holding me back most was honestly, I felt like I'd be abandoning all of my cultures, all of my traditions, everything that I once believed in would be like completely gone just because I'm changing my religion, and my religion was a fundamental part of me, of who I was. And I had a really hard time, drifting, like separating myself from that, accepting Islam. But at some point I realized that actually accepting Islam and being Muslim and practicing Islam would actually make me a better Jew. And I wasn't separating myself from Judaism. It was the same God. It was still the same religion as the God of Judaism. So I came to realize that at some point. And it was just over time, like I said, many little things that I learned about Islam that made sense to me, even the modesty, and, how the modesty of like, how Muslims dress, it made sense to me. And I'm like, my whole life, modesty made sense to me because I was raised Jewish, and it just all made sense to me. And I can't exactly remember what was the last drop that made me Muslim, but I do remember when I decided basically to become Muslim. It was Ramadan, it was 2017. And I was like, I'm going to do Ramadan just because I just want to see what it's like, so I was like, I'll do it. And as a Jew, I had fasted for like Yom Kippur, so it was like 25 hours for Yom Kippur. So I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And I was able to do this. And I was like, you know what, I want to fully immerse myself in it, so I'm gonna like pray too. So subhanallah, I actually learned to pray like really quickly. And I remember that I think it's in the Quran, or it says that God made this language easy for you to understand. And I was like, subhanallah, I was able to learn to pray so quick, and I never had even spoken Arabic. All I knew was like shukran and salam, like honestly. So I started praying, and I remember one time I was in bed, I was like, okay, how do you become Muslim? And it said, you just need to repeat this word. It was the Shahada, the sentence. So I said it in my bed, I was like, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. And I said it, and I'm like, am I Muslim now? Like, I feel the same. So technically, I was Muslim since 2017. So it was in January 26, 2018 that I actually converted to Islam. I took my Shahada, and that's when I consider myself fully Muslim. And yeah, that was pretty much it, how I went from being Jewish to being Muslim. Thank you so much, and ma salama.